Hello and welcome. Frequently, I find myself completely forgetting about this episode. I just don't think anything happens in it of any significance. Now, as I said, I didn't like the previous episode, but it wasn't forgettable. At the very least, some important things happened that are worth remembering. I cannot say that about this episode. Anyway, let's get to it. The episode opens with a long monologue by Digimon. He mentions that Tai and Mimi have caught up with Matt and Izzy. So presumably, after their pieces of island reunited with Infinity Mountain, they found each other. The thing is, shouldn't it be the other way around? That is, it should have been Tai and Matt ran into Izzy and Mimi. Technically, this statement is still fine and correct, but it seems a little off. He also mentions that he has special plans for Joe and Sora, so I suppose this episode is going to feature them. We cut to Joe, who's floating around at sea on his bed, puking over the side. Of course. Gomamon eats all the food out of Joe's bag, which causes him to of course flip out since they don't know when they're going to get back on land. As for Gomamon, well, what a doucher. Seriously. They float by a crate and manage to grab it. They try to open it, but Ogremon ends up popping out of the top. I have just one question. What in the fuck hell was Ogremon doing in a crate floating on the ocean? Ogremon and Gomamon fight for a little bit, Gomamon evolves, and eventually he and Joe just swim away. Ogremon can't swim, so there's little he can do. Quickly, Ikakumon tires, de-evolves, and Joe and Gomamon start sinking into the water. Luckily, nearby, Sora and Biyomon are trying to fish. After a little bit of back and forth, Sora and Biyomon manage to get a bite. They pull it up, but it ends up being Joe and Gomamon. I guess Joe was underwater for a long time because he's out of it and remains unconscious for several minutes. Gomamon fills Sora in on what happened, and then they start talking about Joe. Gomamon makes it sound as if Joe is knocked out because his fight with Ogremon lowered his self-confidence. Yeah. His exact line is this: "I'm worried about his confidence. Fighting Ogremon back there really knocked him out. He needs to rebuild his self-confidence." Okay, first of all, Joe isn't a very confident person anyway. Second of all, he didn't fight Ogremon. You did. And third of all, he's knocked out because he nearly fucking drowned. If I had to venture a guess, I'd say the writers did this because they wanted to try and make it seem as if this episode was about developing Joe's character. This artificial attempt at making the episode seem like it means something continues. As soon as Joe wakes up, Sora tells him that they can't find the others and Joe is going to have to be the leader for now. So is not having a de facto leader really the most important thing right now? I mean, as soon as Joe wakes up, Sora starts throwing this responsibility at him. I mean, they don't have any food, they don't know where they are, they can safely presume that it's dangerous, but they need a leader above everything else? How about you just start doing what you need to do and let a leader emerge organically? If one of these two is more qualified to lead than the other, then that person is going to make himself obvious in a time that requires leadership. Also, I find it completely laughable that Sora is talking about leadership as if it's such a big deal when they have a group of 4 people. Well, 2 people and 2 creatures, but the point still stands. Joe says no way, the others pump him up verbally a little bit, and eventually he agrees to lead them. The episode continues to attempt to make this seem like a big deal, but quite frankly, I don't care at all. It's just one big contrivance. So the group hears some bells and goes to investigate. They find a church. Throughout this entire sequence, the episode will not stop with this leadership crap that doesn't mean anything. So after that crap is done with, they eventually go up to the church, look inside, and see a bunch of humans dancing to music. A priest comes up to them, and they learn that this is a ritual in honor of Lord Bakamon. Gomamon and Biyomon mention that Bakamon is a horrible, evil Digimon who lives among the ghosts. This, of course, pisses the priest off. Eventually, the priest and all the other humans in the church turn into Bakuman. All of them attack. Biyomon and Gomamon can't fight yet since they just did and haven't eaten since, and they're all captured. Joe and Sora are tied up and placed on some sort of altar, while Gomamon and Biyomon are thrown into a dungeon. Now we learn that the Bakuman plan to consume Joe and Sora. Just in the nick of time, however, Gomamon and Biyomon cook up a plan to escape. Basically, they convince the prison guard to try and taunt them. They then convince him to taunt them with food. They get him close enough to the bars, beat him up, and eat the food. So just before the Bakuman eat Joe and Sora, they evolve and manage to break them out. Unfortunately, just before they could do this, the Bakuman summoned Lord Bakuman, basically a much larger version of them. He's quite strong, and Birdramon and Ikakumon find themselves unable to beat him. So we get a bunch more Joe is the leader bullcrap, and Joe comes up with an idea. He pulls out a crucifix and starts splashing holy water on Lord Bakuman while chanting, "The power of Christ compels you, the power of Christ compels you." Oh no, I'm sorry, he did something slightly more ridiculous than that. He references a TV show he once watched in which a Roman physicist theorized that if you chanted something over and over again, it helped you focus on mind over matter. So Joe and Sora start chanting, "Bakuman, lose your power," over and over again. It works, and then Ikakumon and Birdramon successfully defeat him. Now, just for reference, in the original version, it was actually a Buddhist sutra that Joe was chanting. Of course, that got changed because we can't have any references to evil religion in our children's TV show. But quite frankly, I don't think that's any better. It's only slightly, and I mean slightly, less stupid than what they did. Joe could have reached into his bag, pulled out a rocket launcher, and shot Lord Bakuman with it, and it would have been less stupid. This Roman physicist bullshit comes out of absolute nowhere. Joe just somehow manages to pull it out of his butt at the last second. And talk about anticlimactic. Imagine if at the end of the Harry Potter books, Harry defeated Voldemort by just chanting, "Voldemort, lose your power," over and over again. Obviously, these kids aren't going to die, but that doesn't mean you can just pull Deus Ex Machina out whenever they get into danger. Anyway, the Bakuman are defeated. We get more lines about how Joe finally became a good leader, which is all crap. They see some black gears that stop spinning and start going the other way, and they start heading back toward Infinity Mountain. Now, Joe is all about trying to be the responsible one, and I obviously have no problem with episodes about him trying to be this. But stop beating me over the head with it in every other scene. Here's my idea. Let's take this episode and make a few minor changes. Throw out the bullshit about Sora asking Joe to be the leader. Have Joe look at the situation, realize he's the elder, and have him think about how he needs to be the leader in this situation. Don't even have him say anything. Just have him think it, and then have him subtly trying to take the leadership role. Then have them get captured either because Joe made the wrong decision or because Joe froze up. Have him feel guilty about that and resolve to do better in the future. Then have Joe do something that saves the day so he feels better about himself. That's not too much to ask, so really, this episode was right there. It could have been real good. More than anything, they just needed to make it a lot more subtle. There's no need to constantly remind us that Joe is being forced into a leadership role. We get it. Coupled with all the other bullshit in this episode, I gotta say, I find it to be completely dispensable. Just chuck it away, there's nothing worthwhile here. And you know who I really blame for all of this, actually? Sora. Her character is too bland. Rewatching through these episodes, I find myself thinking, what are the parameters of this Sora character? And I still can't figure it out. She's just there. She doesn't have any chemistry with anyone, she doesn't bounce off anyone well, and she doesn't generate conflict with anyone. I'll have a lot more to say about Sora's lack of character in a future review. But for now, suffice to say that the more I'm thinking about it, the more I kind of think that you can't have a very good episode that does something with Sora's character because there's just nothing there. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.